Hello, everyone. It is good to be back. I'm back home. Um, Took a quick trip back home now, and it's very good to be back home. All right, so we're going to get quickly into it. Last week, the week before last, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, we started a series called Types or Trauma, and that series is basically looking into how we pick our romantic partners and how much of what we call our type is actually influenced by the trauma and the experiences that we have gone through that have shaped our worldview regarding relationships. So we decided to turn that into a series, and for the last 2 weeks, we have been talking about the avoidant attachment. And it was quite a deep dive. By no way did we cover the entire scope of what avoidant attachment looks like. And I'm sure that as this show goes on over the years, we will still have some letters that come in that will have us talking more about the avoidant attachment. But so that we keep this series compact, because it's looking like it's going to be like a 5-week series now, 5 or 6 week series, we had to stop where we stopped. And today we're going to start on the anxious attachment style. So, have you been in relationships where it feels like you are too needy? It feels like you are too clingy. You get reports from your partner that you are too clingy, or you don't give them any space. Do you constantly feel like your partner is going to leave or you're going to lose your relationship? Do you have a sense of unrest and unease when it comes to your partner taking time for themselves, taking space for themselves, doing things individually and autonomously and separate from you? Is there a running track of all the bad things that can happen to this relationship running through your mind every single moment? Do you feel this deep need to clutch and hold on tightly to your partner? Because if you don't, you think they might slip through your fingers. If any of this sounds like you or someone you have been with, you might be dealing with an anxious attachment style. So let's get into today's episode.
Does she like me? Was that a date or a hang? Is she single? Wait, what are we? Is it too soon to say I love you? Should I call him now or should I just wait? Maybe I should wait. Wait, should I let her go? Why did he just ghost me like that? Wait, can't we work it out? Is he an F-boy? Is she toxic? We hooked up. Why is he saying we're just friends? Let's face it. Relationships are the best thing when they work and a nightmare when they flop. You're recklessly giddy when Cupid's arrow sticks you in the ass and a nervous, pain-filled wreck when he comes to take his love away. There's hardly anyone who cannot relate to the dizzying highs and debilitating lows of relationships. We are naturally wired for connection, so when that's messed with, it can make us feel crazy. Enter Bambazeled. On this show, we help you figure out if you are being bamboozled by your bae. That's it. Nothing else, nothing fancy, just a real, raw, honest to heavens, and hopefully helpful take on the best to the worst of relationships and everything on the spectrum in between. No topic is off limits, no situation is too taboo or embarrassing. Give us everything. So, if you're wondering if you're being bamboozled by your bae, don't walk, run here. This is your new home. I am your new bestie, and I've got you. Now, let's figure out if you're being bamboozled.
All right. Hello. Welcome. As you can see, we're back in our space. We're going to jump right into today's topic. We're talking about the anxious attachment. And if you listened to the intro, you already have some idea of what we're going to be talking about. I want to start this week's episode by defining what anxiety is. And then we're going to show what that looks like in an attachment style. Okay, so let's define anxiety, shall we? Anxiety, according to the Oxford Dictionary, is a feeling of worry, nervousness, or unease about something with an uncertain outcome. Now, what is an anxious attachment style? Like the avoidant attachment style, the anxious style is one of the 4 primary attachment styles. If you remember last week, we talked about 2 weeks ago, we talked about there being 4 major ones. And I hope that in the time between when we started this series and now, you have gone to do some research of your own to learn more about these attachment styles. Information is free, knowledge is valuable. So I hope you've gone to do some studying of your own. The anxious attachment style is one of the 4 major ones, like we said: the avoidant, the anxious, the disorganized or fearful, and the secure attachment style. And this style of attaching to people is characterized by a deep fear of abandonment and a constant need for reassurance and validation from others. When we think about anxious attachment, through the context of what we've already discussed, which is the avoidant attachment. When you think avoidant, think suppression. Think suppression of emotions. Think of suppression, especially of negative emotions. Think putting away of emotions. Think distancing from emotions. Think the emphasis on the importance of emotional expression or emotional intimacy. And when you're thinking about the anxious attachment, where with the avoidant you think suppression, with the anxious attacher, think amplification. So where one is pushing down, the other is turning it up, like just crank the volume to the highest. And as we go along with this discussion, one of the things that you will find out when we're talking about the characteristics of an avoidant person is that they have this way of they get louder and louder and louder and louder. And when I say louder, I don't necessarily mean with the volume of your voice. No, I mean louder with their bids for connection with their partner or the people around them. As the anxiety increases, so does the way they are reaching out for that reassurance and for that validation. And in many cases, it can be quite destructive. It can be very distressing to the partner, especially if the partner is an avoidant or if they are a securely attached person. Less so if they're securely attached, but it still can be distressing to any person when the volume is constantly turned up in your ears or in your head or the space that you're in, when a person is sort of grabbing and clawing at you for validation and reassurance. So with avoidant, suppression; with anxious, amplification. How does a person become anxiously attached? There are many similarities from what I've studied and what I know. There are many similarities with an anxious attacher and an avoidant attacher's early childhood. But like I said, I think last week, or maybe even in this week's intro, we're all different and our brains respond to the same stimuli differently. And so psychology and, human behavioral sciences, understanding the way the brain works, all those things, it really is not an exact science. It's not an absolute, because you're not dealing with one individual. You're dealing with many different people who process information differently, and things affect us differently. I said earlier on that 2 kids can come from the same exact home, same parents, same parenting style, and both of them turn out with different attachment styles. One can turn out avoidant, the other can turn out really anxious. It depends on the person's individual wiring. But we're going to talk about, some of the early childhood environments that can contribute to creating an anxious attacher. The first one is inconsistent caregiving. We talked about inconsistent caregiving with the avoidant. Where with the avoidant, they take the inconsistent caregiving when it comes to their emotions as a sign not to have emotions. The anxious person takes the inconsistent caregiving as a sign to amplify their emotions. If I make a more earnest, more concerted, more insistent bid for the reassurance, that for the care that I feel like I need, then they will hear me. So, an anxious attachment often develops in response to inconsistent caregiving during infancy and early childhood. I should say, I didn't say this the last time, but attachment styles are formed between when you're born and I think 2 or 3 years old. Now, your attachment style is not something that is fixed. It is not a death sentence. And if you find that you have an insecure attachment, one of the insecure ones, it is very possible to change it. There are methods and steps that you can take to rewire your way of attaching to people, right? So, when a caregiver is unpredictably responsive, sometimes they are attentive and nurturing. Other times they are neglectful, disapproving, or unavailable. The child learns that their needs may or may not be met, and this leads them to have an uncertainty and anxiety around their emotional needs. Now, I'm going to keep juxtaposing this with the avoidance so that we can put things into perspective. Where the avoidance says, this inconsistent caregiving, these emotional needs being neglected, means I don't need to have these emotions, because when I'm coming at my caregivers from an emotional space, I am ignored, rejected, I don't get those needs met, so I'm going to toss them aside. The anxious attacher sees it as sometimes my needs get met, sometimes they don't get met. So I am constantly in a state of questioning, and I'm anxious. Are they going to be met this time? Or are they not going to be met this time? Is this going to be one of the times when mommy comes, when I call? Is it going to be one of the times when she doesn't? Is it going to be one of the times when daddy holds me when I need it? Is it going to be one of the times when he doesn't? So the mind of that child and eventually adult goes into a state of something called hypervigilance. So when you're vigilant, you're watchful, you're focused. Hypervigilance is when you're over-focused on a particular thing. And so the mind of the anxious person is hypervigilant around relationships, around their emotional needs being met, because they were not consistently so. The child didn't think to themselves, oh, there's a reason, a valid reason, sometimes valid. Because I feel like some people think that, we're dumping on parents, and we really are not. Our parents are wonderful people, at least the good ones. And in some cases, they tried their best. But the truth of the matter is that is also invalidating for people who have gone through very deep wounding from their parents. And the reality remains that when we come into this world, the primary people that are responsible for how we develop mentally are your parents or the adults around you, if they don't happen to be like your biological parents. Another factor that contributes to a person becoming anxiously attached is emotional unavailability. Children who do not receive consistent emotional support and presence from their caregivers may feel unsure about their caregivers' reliability. And this uncertainty fosters anxiety and a need for constant reassurance. When we come into this world, we've said this multiple times, the people we come and meet, they are our all. Children, until they get to a certain age, are not even able to mentally disconnect or separate themselves from their primary caregivers. They don't even see mommy or daddy as separate from them. They see everybody as them. Children are little narcissists. And, they come into this world thinking they are all that exists. And everything in the sphere of their access, they see as them. Mommy is me, daddy is me, my big sister is me, my big brother is me. It's all me. So and the children take their cues of what is good and what is not good from the reactions they get from the people, the adults around them, because they think that this is them. So if a child does something and mommy starts laughing, notice that child stores it and they know to do it again. Because mommy laughing makes baby laugh, and this is a good thing, right? That's the way the brain works. I've said it multiple times that we are creatures that learn we are mirroring creatures, and it is the behavior that is modeled for us that when we are children that we pick up and learn, and it forms our personality and forms our expression or our expressing of ourselves. So if a parent, for whatever reason, this is not that your parent is a devil or is bad. No. For whatever reason, they had to go to work. They travel a lot. You lost a parent. There are some kids who developed their anxious attachment because of one of their parents passed away. And the inconsistency of that parent's availability to them. One moment, mommy is here. The next moment, mommy is gone. And I'm never going to see her again. But I don't understand what that means, because I always see mommy. So wait, mommy is not coming back? Daddy is not coming back? It alters the chemistry of this person's brain, because we believe that these people we came here and met are here to meet our needs. And the only way that our needs can be met is through these people, through mom, dad, the adults in your life, the environment you live in. So if they are not consistently there, it's telling you, my needs will not be met. My needs will not be met. My needs will not be met. And for the people who break, into the anxious attachment style, there is this feeling like, it almost feels like dying. If my needs are not met, I'm going to die. It's a biological reaction. Some anxious people feel it right to the very core of them. And anxious attachment is a big one. I don't even know how we're going to cover all of it, but I'm going to give you people some resources and some books to read if you have the time or the interest that will help you understand anxious attachment fully and extensively. So essentially, you cannot rely on your primary caregivers or the people in your environment to be there for you all the time. You don't know when they're going to be there, and you don't know when they're not going to be there. And that frightens the brain of this person and causes them to be hyper focused on the ways to keep people around. Because the child is thinking, it's my fault that it is my doing that when I get my needs met, it's because of something I did. When I don't get my needs met, it's also because of something I did. So the child is now hyper focused on the things they did when their needs were met, even though that has nothing to do with it. Mommy was just not around. Mommy was at work. Daddy had traveled. But for them, when they get their emotional needs met, when I get help when I need to be held, when I get helped when I need to be helped, when mommy and daddy play with me when I need to be played with, when they comfort me when I'm having an emotionally distressing experience, I think it's something that I did that got them to do that. And when I'm having that same emotional distress and nobody comes, mommy and daddy are not available, comfort is not available, I'm thinking it's something that I've done that's made them go away. And so the brain starts hyper focusing on What were the things you were doing? How were you this is actually the birth for some people of people pleasing, where they become the kind of person who will do anything to keep their primary source of emotional reassurance, emotional validation, emotional connection around. So you start to focus on how was I when mommy came? And I'm not going to talk too much about fawning because there are four major stress responses: flight, fight, freeze, fawn. Flight, you take off, most avoidance fly. Freeze, it's when it's like a deer is caught in the headlights. You literally you stop inside the danger. You're unable to flee from the danger. So you freeze in the danger. This is where you find people who are in domestic violence situations and they're being beaten and it's almost like they're in a coma. Do you get what I'm saying? Your brain freezes in the moment of pain or torture or hurt. The pain, the torment, the torture. And instead of fleeing or fighting back, you freeze. Many women who have been physically, sexually assaulted will tell you that in the moment, they didn't fight back. They just were there. And it was like they couldn't do anything. Not because they wanted it to happen, but because their brain went into freeze mode. Fight is, we know what fight is. Fight is square up with the threat, square up with the danger, square up with the emotions, square up with the source of the pain or the threat, and fight back. Now, that sounds good until you realize that there are people who live in fight mode. And fight mode will have you fighting bad, but also good things as well. And then you have fawn. Fawn is the easiest way to explain the fawn mode is when a person starts to negotiate with the source of their wounding, the source of their trauma, the source of their pain. It's kind of like Stockholm syndrome, it's not just Stockholm syndrome. With fawning, you can fawn with your friends, you can fawn with your parents, you can fawn with your partner. Essentially, you assume a posture of submission and a pseudo agreeableness, even when that thing is causing you pain and hurt. An example of fawning can be like, I'm afraid of my sister. Like, for instance, I'm afraid of my big sister, and maybe because she hits me, or maybe because she's very disapproving, maybe she's very critical, maybe she yells all the time, maybe she's mean to me, right? Now, fawning in that situation would be, my sister can say the most outrageous thing that is not true, is not founded in any truth. In fact, is flat out mean and horrible. And instead of me saying, hey, that's mean, don't say that, that's horrible, I will either keep quiet, or in an extreme case, I will agree. I'll be like, yeah, oh yeah, for real, that's true. Even if I don't necessarily agree with it, even if I don't necessarily think or feel that way. Because I don't want to incur the wrath and the pain that comes with the wrath of the person that is abusing me, I go along with whatever it is that they're doing and whatever it is that they want. So we've talked about, now that was not part of our conversation, but it's important to talk about, the stress responses, because in our attachment styles, you see the different stress responses come into play. And like I said, with an avoidant, you have a lot of flights disappear. They'll disappear. You even have some fawning as well. You have a lot of fights. Because they're consistently trying to remain separate from the emotional connection, separate from the other person. With the anxious, you have a lot of fawning. You have a lot of fawning and a lot of freezing. A third factor that contributes to the formation of an anxious attachment is separation and reunion. Intermittent separation and reunion. What do I mean? When there are episodes of separation and reunion with caregivers, for instance, and this is going to sound ridiculous, but it is true. It is very true. When a child has spent year one, like 1 year with their mom or dad, consistently having access to them, and it's now time for them to go to daycare. It's time for them to go to kindergarten. It's time for them to start school. Do you know some children develop an anxious attachment from that, just from that separation alone, because they are not used to being separated or away from this source of their source of care or the source of their needs being met. There are some kids you cannot they will glom onto their mom's dress or whatever and wail and scream and cry. And when we see things like that, we just think, oh, come on, little kid. Oh, come here. Oh, don't worry. Oh, come on. But we don't understand that that child's brain is panicking, for real panicking. And they are afraid that, wait a minute, are you taking me away from the person who meets my needs? And am I ever going to see them again? You as an adult think that's the most ridiculous shit I've ever heard. Of course I'm going to see them again. But an adult has the benefit of lived experience, where a child does not. So something as simple as going to kindergarten, going to daycare for the first time, the first couple of times, going to the hospital, to stay at the hospital. And in Nigeria, people are allowed to stay with their kids in the hospital. People are allowed to stay with their family in the hospital. But in certain other parts of the world, you will not sleep overnight there. You won't put mattress on the floor and lie down. No, they won't do it. You have visiting hours. You'll come visit and go. And something as seemingly little as daddy and mommy coming and leaving, that child's brain is going, but why are they leaving? But why are they leaving me? And the child feels like, you left me. They don't feel like you went to work or you traveled for work, or the fact that daddy isn't home for 2 weeks is because he went to go and bring money to pay your school fees. The child's brain is thinking, why did daddy leave me? What did I do? What's wrong with me that daddy left? Is daddy going to come back? What do I have to do to bring daddy back? These separations and reunions makes the child feel abandoned. And this is going to take us into a deepish discussion about the fear of abandonment. Now, one of the major players in the game of the anxious attacher is the fear of abandonment. Let me tell you something. Whew. The fear of abandonment, we think to ourselves, what's that? What's abandonment? If you've gone through life and as in your early life, you didn't experience or witness loss, especially of a parent, you might not understand how children who have experienced that develop this fear of abandonment. When your primary caregiver goes away and never comes back. So this is the same thing in the case of death, of the person passing. It also applies in the case of this person maybe divorcing and separating and the parents now being separated. It happens in the case where a parent or primary caregiver is ill to a point where they are unable to care for themselves or their child. Remember, the child's brain is interpreting these things as something is wrong with me. They left. They are not meeting my needs because something is wrong with me. When you talk about abandonment issues or a fear of abandonment, think about it in that context. And that is why it is so deep for people who have that fear of abandonment. It is the forever part of it. So in the case of someone whose mother passed on, whose father passed on when they were young, they learned in a very harsh way that it is possible that someone you love with your entire life can go and not come back. And they won't tell you that they're leaving. You won't get a chance to say goodbye. And you never get to see them ever again. No matter what you do. So there are some people whose minds are it's almost like their brains got stuck at the time when that first major abandonment happened. And they have silently sworn that they will never go through that grief and pain of separation like that, of sudden and final separation like that ever again. And an anxious attachment starts to form. An anxious attachment style starts to form. And so they think, if I held on tightly enough that time, this person wouldn't have left. This person wouldn't have gone. At least they wouldn't have gone without me knowing. And at least if I knew, I might have been able to follow them. And so guess what? Now, as an adult, I'm going to hold on so tight that this person cannot escape. They cannot leave. Another factor that contributes to an anxious attachment being formed is the family dynamic. Now, if you grew up or live in an environment that is considered high conflict. Now, what is high conflict? A high conflict environment is an environment that is rife with conflict. Conflict can be, you have a very emotionally reactive mother. She goes from 0 to 100 in a few seconds, and with no warning, people are getting yelled at, people are getting smacked down, people are getting punished, people are getting, like mother or father, people are getting punched in the face. So you are consistently on high alert, like, what is that I'm going to do this time that's going to set mommy off? What am I going to do this time that's going to set daddy off? That's high conflict. A high conflict environment is one where the adults in that environment don't have the necessary emotional skills for nervous system regulation. And so the adults in that environment are actually emotionally dysregulated. They can have jobs, they can have spouses, they can have friends, they can have money, they can have whatever, but they are emotionally dysregulated in that they are not able to be aware of, to process, manage, and contain their emotions on their own. They use other people to do that. And emotional dysregulation can look like many things. It can look like screaming at the top of your lungs over an issue that really does not require that. It can look like a very determined sort of irritation, like you're very short-tempered, you're very irritable. That's emotional dysregulation. Emotional dysregulation looks like crying all the time, all the time, all the time. That is emotional dysregulation. Shutting down your emotions is emotional dysregulation. So anyways, the people in that environment are emotionally dysregulated. And because they're emotionally dysregulated, the emotional atmosphere of that home or that environment is never steady. It's always like this. Is either we're all laughing, and some of us are laughing under duress because daddy is laughing, so we all have to laugh. Mommy is laughing, so we all have to laugh. There's peace in the land. Mommy goes like this, everything goes up in flames. Everybody's lives are thrown in disarray because mommy is not happy, daddy is not happy. So it is a very emotionally volatile environment. that isn't stable and calm. And because it's not stable and calm, the children in that environment are not able to be emotionally stable and calm themselves because they are constantly jumping between mommy or daddy or primary caregivers swings, mood swings, and emotional swings. Yeah. So that's what a high conflict. Those are examples of a high conflict environment. Also, conflict like yelling, shouting, bickering. Um, whoever's voice is the loudest is the winner. Um, High conflict is an invalidating environment where um, people are favored based on performance. If you did this better than your sister or your brother, you're the better kid, you're the special child, you're the wanted child, you're the loved child. That is high conflict as well. So conflict is the opposite of peace. Conflict is the opposite of stability. So anything that alters or messes around with the peace and stability of this person's mind within their environment is a high conflict environment. Nigeria is a high conflict environment. Just if you don't need, if no example I've made is useful to you, just think Nigeria. Another factor that contributes to an anxious attachment being formed is traumatic experiences. Now, early childhood trauma. I think we need to take our minds off of this the defensiveness when the word trauma comes up, because I think that it makes us feel vulnerable and weak. It's like nothing happened to me, nothing bad happened to me. My life was good. Don't talk about. And I've said this in another post. People rise to the defense of their parents because we love our parents. Our parents are our superheroes, but that doesn't mean that our parents were not and are not capable of being the major source of some of our deepest wounds. That is just life. And so we were talking about traumatic experiences being one of the major causes of an anxiety, of an anxious attachment style. So when there are things such as a loss of a parent, which I said before, abuse, prolonged illness, which I mentioned earlier on, anything that puts the stability of your emotional needs being met in jeopardy can cause an anxious attachment. When I think about these attachment styles, I honestly, it elicits a lot of compassion in me because nobody is bad. People just developed according to the things that happened to them. So, what does it look like when you are an anxiously attached person? I'm laughing because I've done some of these things. I mean, you'll find yourself in many of these. You'll find, so at least, maybe not all, but in some of them. And like I said, your attachment style develops when you're a child, but it also changes based on the experiences you have as you mature and when you become an adult. You can actually have a person who is securely attached because they came from a stable, emotionally stable childhood environment, and they get into a relationship with someone who is avoidantly attached. And if they stay in there long enough and the avoidant is not working on their stuff, the securely attached person can develop an insecure attachment. They can become anxiously attached based on the experiences they're having with the avoidant person. So attachment styles are not fixed, set in stone. You can change it if you choose to work on it. And my advice for people who are securely attached is, when you meet someone or you're with someone who is insecurely attached and the person isn't showing any signs or willingness to work on their attachment style and on the harmful, destructive, or painful behaviors that come with that insecure attachment style, you have every right to say, no, I don't deserve this, I'm going to leave, because it can affect you. It can affect your own psyche. So what are some of the things that, an anxious attachment style looks like? Hypervigilance. Remember when we started this conversation, I talked about something called hypervigilance. two ways that you can measure hypervigilance or you can spot hypervigilance. So, constant monitoring and heightened sensitivity. Now, individuals with anxious attachments tend to be hypervigilant about their relationships, especially. They're not hypervigilant about anything else. But when it comes to relationships, they're firing on all cylinders, and they will even gather some other people's cylinders too, and they will fire on those. It's never enough. They're never safe enough to stop excessively monitoring their relationship. They never feel safe enough to just relax and rest in their relationship. They have to constantly be watching it and watching it. Is it going well? Is something spoiling? What is happening? Oh, he smiled at me today. Everything is good. I came out from the room and he wasn't smiling. That means I am a horrible girlfriend. I am a horrible wife. He hates me and he's going to leave me. And maybe he was frowning because something happened at work. So that's what constant monitoring is. They're hypervigilant about their relationships, constantly monitoring their partner's actions and behaviors for signs of potential abandonment or rejection. So they're not monitoring. Sorry, just got a bit thirsty. They're not monitoring the relationship for any other reason than that they want to make sure they can spot when this person is going to try to leave them. Remember, I said earlier on that what is happening in the mind of the anxious person is not like they don't want you to have your freedom. But a child, little narcs that they are, we think everything is about us, good and bad. And so imagine if your mother died, or your father died, or your sibling died, or someone who was in your life that brought you emotional comfort and safety passes on. The child is thinking, they passed on because of me. But they don't understand that the world around them is not a reflection of them. Things that are happening in the world, it's not all about you. It's not all about them. But you don't know that until a certain age. And so children think everything is about them, including mommy or daddy passing on. And if someone is not there to explain and walk them through this grief properly, they can grow up thinking, if I had done something different, if I had held on to mom tighter, if I had held on to dad tighter, they'd still be here. And so you know what I'm going to do now? When people come into my life, the anxious person becomes like a black hole, where people can come in, but they're not allowed to leave. They're not allowed to leave. The anxious person will do anything to make sure that they are not left. Because for them, being left reminds them of that time when they were a child, when they were left forever. So they are constantly monitoring their relationships. They're constantly searching. He smiled today, we're good. He held me today, we're good. She kissed me in this particular way that she always kisses me, we are fine. Oh, he was going to work, he kissed me, he didn't kiss me on my forehead, Armageddon. We spoke on the phone, he said love you instead of I love you. What's going on? Is he cheating on me? Your partner has a friend who they like to hang out with. You, the anxious partner, your heart starts beating. Like, is he gonna like this friend more than me? Is she gonna like this friend more than me? Is this friend going to come? Are they coming to come and replace me? Are they going to come and take the source of my needs being met? Are they gonna take this source away? It's a very, very tiring way to live. Because your brain is never at rest. Your brain is never at peace within your relationships. It's always running. And it affects the way that you behave. A heightened sensitivity means that they are often highly sensitive to changes in mood, in tone, or behavior in others, perceiving them as potential threats to the relationship's stability. So, anxiously attached people are forever monitoring changes in the people around them because they were in environments that were, remember, emotionally unstable. It was either highly volatile. Today, daddy is screaming at the top of his lungs. Tomorrow, he's playing with everybody. Today, mommy is shouting and telling you that you are a useless child and she does not know what is wrong with you and why she gave birth to this kind of child. Next tomorrow, you and her are singing praise and worship. The emotionally volatile environment. Or today, mommy is here. Tomorrow, she's not. Today, big sister is here, tomorrow she's gone. Today, daddy is here, tomorrow he's gone. And you don't know when they're coming back. Some of them never come back. Because of that, this person is always looking around to see, how do I monitor mommy's mood, or daddy's mood, or my boyfriend's mood, my girlfriend's mood? I need to be very attuned to these changes, because it can help me prevent whatever it is that will put them in the mood or the space to leave. And so anxiously attached people can be some of the sweetest people you've ever met, I promise you. But sometimes that sweetness is not just from a place of benevolence. It is from a place of fear and anxiety, because they are caretaking to make sure that they leave no stone unturned in making sure that they keep you with them. That's what it is. It's codependency. But the codependency is coming from the place of, I don't want to be abandoned. And if I am not sensitive, extra sensitive to the things that can change in you, you can switch up on me and I won't know, and then you leave, and then I wouldn't have been able to do anything about it. And then I'll be alone. And if I'm alone, my needs are not going to be met. So that's hypervigilance through the lens of, constantly monitoring. They're constantly monitoring, and they're very highly sensitive to the people around them. A second way that anxious people present is in their need for reassurance. Oh, give me assurance. Give me assurance. I can't sing the song very well, but Annie. I give my baby lifetime insurance. So it's not that kind. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be reassured. That is a human need. So please, no one in the comments should get upset and say, don't say we are abnormal because we want our needs to be met. No. Being reassured is absolutely normal. But with the anxious people, they have an almost unquenchable need for reassurance. Think of human beings as buckets, right? With a bucket, if you pour into the bucket, there's a certain limit that when you pour into the bucket will be full, right? But think of the anxious person as a bucket. You see a bucket that looks like a complete bucket, but there are holes poked underneath the base of the bucket. Those holes were punctured in by trauma, abuse, abandonment, loss of a parent, loss of a loved one, adverse childhood experiences, high conflict environments. They were poking those holes. The anxious attacher has holes underneath their bucket. You coming to date them, marry them, be their friend, you can't see that. What you see is a whole bucket. And so you pour. And when you pour into the bucket, you think, I showed up for my friend today. I showed up for my girlfriend today. I showed up for my boyfriend today. My husband, my wife, whatever. That should be enough. I told them I love them. They know I love them. I gave them a hug. I told them I'm never going to leave them. And with a secure attacher, that water, the water you've poured in the bucket, the water of assurance, the water of I love you, the water of I showed up for you, the water of I'm there for you, it's there in the bucket. And they can access it whenever they need it. With the anxious attacher, you pour that in and go, thinking you have deposited assurance in this person. It has poured out. It has poured out. And so they come to you empty, like you never put anything in there. And they're asking for, so pouring now, I'm dry, pouring. And you're like, but I poured. You look inside, but there's nothing there. Because there are holes underneath the bucket that all the love and reassurance you're pouring into is seeping out of from the bottom. And this is happening on a subconscious level, like we always talk about. They don't know. They themselves don't know why they constantly need you to pour in. Way more than normal. All they know is that they feel that fear inside, that it's not enough. It's not enough. There's nothing in here. And so you will be forever pouring until one or both of you realize that, hold on, everything I'm pouring inside this person is pouring out. It's not holding, it's not sealing, it's not being contained. And then you start to do the work to plug up the holes. So that when those holes are plugged up, you can pour and what you've poured remains. Does that analogy make sense? All right, let's keep going. So when you think of a constant need for reassurance, take your mind to the example we just made with my pencil case. You're pouring into a bucket that can never be filled. And so it is exhausting. It's exhausting for the partner because some partners feel like, I can't get it right. I can't be good enough. I can't do enough that this person will be satisfied. And if your anxious attacher is someone who maybe has anger issues, for instance, they're going to lash out at you a lot, harshly, violently, meanly, cruelly. Because remember when we started, we said with the anxious person, they're amplifying. It's higher. The volume is going higher. It does not come down. Because for them, if I did more, I would have been able to keep this person. So I need to be louder. I need to put myself in a position where I must be seen. Because if they don't see me, they will not know that I need anything, and then they will not meet my needs. And if my needs are not met, then for them, it's almost like I don't exist. So the ways that constant need for reassurance manifests is validation seeking and a fear of rejection. Now, what is validation seeking? Anxiously attached people often seek constant reassurance and validation from their partners or loved ones to feel secure. They don't need it for any other reason. They just need it to feel secure. They want to know that you see them, you hear them, you understand them. And there is nothing wrong with that. The only reason it becomes problematic is when you do see them, you do hear them, you do understand them, you do love them, and you have communicated that, and they cannot hear it. It's not filling the bucket of their emotions because it's draining out from the bottom through all the wounds, the emotional wounds, with the biggest of which is a fear of abandonment, where the water just gushes out from the bottom. It's like pouring whoosh. It's like nothing is there. And so your reassurance is battling against their fear of abandonment. And with most anxious people, because if you're in a relationship, you're an adult. We are hoping that if you're in a relationship, you're an adult. You have spent years of your life developing, solidifying, hardening into this person. That hole is big AF. It's a massive hole. So imagine if your partner is this little tap pouring into you like a normal person, and then you have this 20-something year sized hole, 30-something year sized hole, 50-something year sized hole at the bottom of your bucket. The water won't even touch the bucket. It's going straight down. Oh gosh, what was that? What did I just do? It's going straight down. Oh, the water is pouring through the hole. This show is it's not that kind of show, guys. But you get what I'm saying. The water is going right out the bucket. And so they're constantly seeking your validation, because your validation to an anxious person indicates that you will stay with them. Them being validated by their partner or their primary source of affection, whatever you want to call it, means that this person sees me as valuable enough to stay with. If they are consistently telling me how wonderful I am, or if they're consistently like showing up, if they're consistently pouring into my bucket way more than any other person needs their bucket poured into, it means that if they're taking all that time to be pouring, they're not taking any time to be walking. If they're pouring, they're not walking away, they're right there. One of the reasons they want to keep you pouring is because it's like if you're running, you can't be sleeping at the same time. If you're pouring, you can't be walking away at the same time. So just stay here and keep pouring into me. That way I know you're here. I know you're still here. I know you're still here. If you stop for a second, I can close my eyes and open my eyes and you're gone. So they're constantly seeking validation. They have a fear of rejection. This still falls under the need for reassurance. Anxious people may exhibit clingy or needy behaviors, fearing that any lack of attention or affection signals impending rejection. Your boyfriend is on his phone, talking with his friends. You're sitting beside him. You look at him, you look at the phone. Let's say you want to watch a movie together, right? His phone rings, picks up his phone. He's talking on his phone. My guy, my G, whatever guys call themselves. For a secure attacher, that's not a problem. In fact, they can probably start playing that film, they watch it by themselves. And they're watching it by themselves. It's not in anger. It is like, I want to watch the film, he doesn't. We're two separate people. We live in two separate worlds. He can do him and I can do me. And it doesn't mean the relationship is in trouble. The anxious attacher has already started, the mind has already started going. It's 100 miles per second. Yeah, now. How long is this call, first of all? Okay. Call is getting really long. His focus is on this other person. Is it a woman? Is it a guy? Oh, it sounds like one of his colleagues, one of his friends, one girl. Okay, is that his female friend in his office that he says is very, very nice? Wow, is she nicer than me? But why are they on the phone for so long? But is it that he does not respect me? Because I'm sitting down right here, we're supposed to be watching this movie. He doesn't respect me enough to come off his phone. And wait, is she making him laugh? Does he laugh that way with me? And from your boyfriend having a phone call with his female friend, you in your mind, you have seen the doom that is coming for your relationship. He no longer respects you. He's not affectionate towards you. In fact, this reminds you of the time where you people went to bed together and he didn't intertwine his legs with your legs the way you usually do. So, this is what, it's already started going bad. He didn't hold my leg in the night yesterday. Today he's on the phone for 17 minutes. Tomorrow he's going to walk out the door. And that can lead this person to start to act out. They can decide, I'm watching this film again. They can start to watch the film, but they're watching it in contempt of their boyfriend. All of it is just in a bid to get the attention and affection back on them. Because remember what I said, if you are focusing on me, then you are not leaving. So that was just like a funny example of what an anxious person, an anxious attacher would look like in their relationship. Anything that is different from the established form of affection, anything that is different, it sends the anxious person into panic. And they start to think, our relationship is ending. Things are getting bad. What is happening? Why blah, blah, blah? Is this guy about to leave me? Is this girl about to leave me? Has she found someone else? Is she interested in someone else? Why is this person not jealousy, envy, attention seeking, all of those things? The slightest change in what the established level and quality of affection was. All right, so a third manifestation of the anxious attacher is low self-esteem. Now, I want to say this before I talk about low self-esteem. I don't know how it is that we've come to a place where when we talk about self-esteem, we think about it, it's almost like an insult. So each person has low self-esteem. See this low self-esteem person, no, it's not an insult. It is a state of being. And I think many more people would be willing to have conversations about their self-esteem if we started talking about self-esteem and self-worth as a state of being, more as a state of being, less as this condescending insult that we currently relate the word or the term low self-esteem with. Yeah? So when I say low self-esteem, please, nobody should feel insulted. Don't feel triggered. It is something that should elicit compassion in anyone, not judgment. So, anxious people, their sense of worth, their sense of self, their sense of existence, and how valuable that existence is tightly linked to their relationship. Tightly linked to their relationships. Their self-esteem is very closely tied to the quality and stability of their relationships. And therefore, they may struggle with feelings of unworthiness and inadequacy when there are difficulties in their relationship. Relationship is having a problem. The anxious person is having a problem. The relationship is having a problem. The avoidant person, not necessarily so. In fact, they are spending more time running away than being in the relationship. The anxious person is spending all their time running into the relationship. And so they are so into the relationship that they are unable to separate themselves from their relationship. And so anything that is happening in your relationship affects you. When the relationship is good, you're good. When it's bad, you are bad. When you're getting along with your partner, you are on cloud 9. When your partner and you are having a fight, everybody knows. Everybody knows. People can tell this person and their boyfriend are fighting. This person and their girlfriend, they are fighting. When they start misbehaving like this, something has happened at home. Or his wife has done something. Her husband has done something. They are not able to be an autonomous entity, as it were, from the state of their relationships. Another way that low self-esteem is manifested is in self-doubt. Anxiously attached individuals often doubt their own value. They doubt their attractiveness. They doubt their intelligence. They doubt their abilities. They doubt themselves. And this leads to a persistent fear that their partner might find someone better. It's not a healthy state of being to always be afraid that your partner's going to meet someone better than you. Human beings are different. And our metrics of measuring what is better or what is not constantly changing, are not fixed. And therefore, for me, the concept of better and not better is not even a real thing. It's a contrived it's a contrived concept. Because to a man who likes yellow women, yellow is better. To a man who likes dark women, you can be the finest, yellowest thing on the planet. To him, he's not attracted to that. So is the yellow woman better than the dark woman, or is the dark woman better than the yellow? Do you see what I'm saying? So this concept of this is the better kind of person, it's a waste of precious energy and time. And it causes wahala that is not necessary. Anxious people are always worried that, because remember I said earlier on, they think this person that left them, the first person that put that fear of abandonment wound inside of them, either through abuse, either through loss of a parent, loss of a significant family member, insufficient emotional support, and all of those things. They feel like they caused it. It was something about me that caused it. And so when you grow up with that intertwined into your personality, you believe it is something about me that will cause this relationship to end. And if it is me that will cause it to end, it is also me that will cause it to stay. So you're always looking at people in the light of how they compare to you. Is she prettier? Is he taller? Does he have more money? Does she have more assets? Is this person better? Am I better? Because the thought is the better thing gets to keep the prize. So I have to be the better thing. And then anxious people, they get into a mental tizzy when they see their partner or they see other people who, by whatever metrics or standards have been established in them, the anxious person, as what is better or not. If that person meets that criteria, they're worried, now this person is better than me. And it becomes a whole big thing in their minds. This is going to be the final manifestation of insecure, anxious attachment I'm going to talk about, just because of time, is emotional intensity. Anxious attachers are very emotionally intense. They are very intense. Remember, I said at the beginning, avoidance suppress, anxious amplifies. So it's very high emotionality and anxiety and worry, lots of anxiety and worry. Anxious attachers, they experience emotions intensely and they may have a difficulty regulating these emotions. Remember, I talked about emotional regulation in the home? Yeah. So they have a difficulty regulating these emotions, which leads them to dramatic responses to relationship issues. Do you know people who have these big responses, big reactions? Like when I say big, I mean big, to real or perceived or even real relationship issues. You can have a fight with your partner and you start packing your things and you say you're leaving. Big reaction. You have a disagreement or you guys just see things differently. Next thing, if you have access to this person's parents, maybe you've called the parents and you are crying on the phone. I don't know what I did. I don't know when he's coming back. I don't know why he's... Your girlfriend is going out with her friends. You call her 17 times in 3 hours. You see her talking to another guy. Next thing, she has dated, she has married that guy and had 3 of his children. You're reacting like her talking to that guy is her saying yes to his proposal of marriage. Big reaction. You cut off a person and stop talking to them. You stop talking to them completely over an issue that ordinarily other people would have been able to resolve. Big reaction. Anxious people are constantly worrying about the state of their relationships. And this can lead to high levels of anxiety and emotional turbulence. Most of us have flown in planes before. We know what turbulence is. It can be one of the scariest things that can happen to you on a plane, barring like a snakes on the plane incident. Turbulence, especially if it's like really rocky turbulence, that's when people start praying, people start calling all the different gods that they serve. People start, because turbulence feels like this plane is going to fall out of the sky. But you see, for people who fly often, because of experience, think of it, let's analogy time. So think of your relationship like a plane. Turbulence is life and the things that happen in life. Your relationship, the plane, is going through life. Sometimes it's smooth, sometimes it hits some turbulence, and it shakes the plane a little bit. Now, your partner in this analogy is the pilot. You are also the pilot. An experienced pilot going through turbulence is calm. He knows, or she knows, that this is a part of flying. And if I keep a steady hand and I do what I've been trained to do, we're going to keep this plane in the sky. We're going to get where we're going. We will get out of this turbulence. An experienced pilot also knows what to do if the turbulence is too extreme. They know to warn the passengers. They know how to calm the passengers down. They know what to do with the plane to navigate it in a way that makes sure they keep that plane in the sky. That's what a secure partner feels like. They sabi. When you and them go through the turbulence, go through the skies of life in your plane, that is your relationship, they know how to keep that plane in the sky, both of y'all, even when it hits turbulence. Now, you're with an insecurely attached person, avoidant, anxious, fearful, the pilot starts to panic because of a lack of experience. And I think that's one of the reasons why new pilots fly with older pilots, more experienced pilots, so that when they come to a situation like that, like high turbulence, the older, more experienced pilots are able to say, calm down. This is what you need to do. This is what you're going to experience, but you're going to get out of it if you stay calm and in control. An anxious attacher is like a pilot in the cockpit that just started flying and they hit bad turbulence. In fact, they hit small turbulence, but they react like they have flown into like a tornado. Big reactions. Same thing with an avoidant. The avoidant presses the eject button from the jet, leaves the perfectly good plane, perfectly fine plane. They eject and they disappear because they're like, ooh, turbulence, this plane is going to crash. Let me disappear. Anxious attachers are consistently or constantly worrying about the state of their relationship. Is it good? Are we good? Are things good? Are we fine? Are we okay? Are we not okay? If we're not okay, what can I do? What can I do? If I cannot do it, then there's problem. If there is problem, then we are going to break up. If we're going to break up, then I'm going to die. And that can be exhausting for both partners, for the anxious person and for their partner. Because if you're constantly checking your relationship, what time are you spending being in the relationship? What time are you spending enjoying the relationship? I think we have come to a good place to stop this week's episode. Next week, we're going to continue talking about the anxious attachment and the ways that this attachment shows up in our relationships. But for today, we're going to stop here and say thank you so very much to everyone who has tuned in this week, to everyone who continues to tune into this show. I deeply appreciate all of you. It's not easy talking about some of these things. Some of us feel triggered, some of us feel like, oh my goodness, that's me, or that's someone I know. We're not talking about these things to castigate or bring down anyone. We're talking about this so that we can educate ourselves and position ourselves to be the best we can be in our relationships, to show up the best we can for our partners, to love them the ways that they need to be loved, and to love ourselves the way we need to be loved as well. So please, if any of the stuff that we talk about on this channel resonates with you, take it as a chance to go and investigate and dig further into who you are and the ways that you show up in life. And just take this as your launching pad, and explore and find out more about yourself from here. If these thoughts have been helpful to you, I would ask that you please share them with someone who you think they would be helpful to as well. I appreciate every view, every viewer, every person who comes here and comments and likes and shares. Thank you so very much. You're helping to get the word out there. Our subscribers have increased, our viewers have increased, and that makes me so stoked. Thank you so very much to everyone who is helping me make this happen. All right, you know what time it is. Sign off with me. In life, we can always do better, or we can do worse. Let us try to find ourselves in the former more than we are in the latter. Stay safe out there in those relationship streets. Make sure that you are not bamboozling or being bamboozled by Bay. I will see you again in next week's episode. Until then, please let love guide you always. Bye for now.